Hello, my name is Alex Clark, and on behalf of Aberdeen Performing Arts and all our festival partners, welcome to Granite Noir. It's lovely to see you all, and I know that there are lots of you. We are going to be joined tonight by, well, what hasn't she been called? The rock star of Nordic noir, the Swedish Agatha Christie, the queen of Swedish crime, none other than Camilla Läckberg, who has sold 25 million copies, at least, it's probably and counting, of her 12 novels. They've been published in 40 languages, in 60 countries. And we're here this evening to talk about her new book, The Gilded Cage. I shan't go on for a long time. I shall simply say to you that you are very welcome. In fact, you are positively encouraged to ask questions. Camilla has told me she will answer anything, and I think we should hold her to that. We have some wonderful people behind the scenes. This event is being British Sign Language interpreted, and our wonderful interpreter Leslie is there. The link is there if you would like to avail of our services. You will not see the fabulous Barbara and Barry, who are fielding questions for us. I am delighted to have them there, but that is enough. Let us bring in Camilla. Camilla, hello, how are you?
Oh, I was muted. Now I'm
Camilla, isn't that the way when just before this we were having a tremendous laugh about lawyers who have cats' faces and all the things that go wrong, and you were saying, goodness, I think it's going to be okay, and my 4-year-old isn't going to come in, and it's just, these things are so nerve-wracking, aren't they?
Always something. And I've been looking for the cat filter. It's lovely, but I couldn't find it. So
are you getting used to doing events like this? Because you have such a following. You must talk to your fans and readers all the time. Are you getting used to it?
yes, I have actually done quite a few of these, and I would say that I'm used to it anyway, because I've always talked a lot to my readers through blog or Instagram, which is what I use now the most. I even started the quarantine in this spring with doing a quarantine reading. I read from my first book for half an hour every day to my readers. So that was quite a nice way to connect with them. So I enjoyed that very much.
Your novels, as is very well known about you, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later, are set, many of them, in Fjällbacka, the small Swedish harbour town, which is incredibly atmospheric. I know because I've been there myself. It's incredibly beautiful. And the stories are often drawn from the history of Fjällbacka and the people who have lived there over the years. But this one, The Gilded Cage, is different, isn't it? There is a kind of echo to Fjällbacka, but it's a Stockholm story. Just tell us a little bit about it.
Well, I would say this story is, I have two parts of my life. My first part of my life, I grew up in Fjällbacka, but then I moved to Stockholm. So for me, it's like two parallel universes. I will always have my heart in Fjällbacka, but my heart is also now in Stockholm. So this book is actually set in Stockholm. It's not as, how should I say, it's not as much cozy crime as Fjällbacka Murders. It's more a little wink to the 80s genre, which we all loved, didn't we? With Jackie Collins and Sidney Sheldon, all of those fantastic, glamorous books. So it's a little bit of a wink to those.
It really is. I'm so glad you said that, because I was feeling that kind of vibe of those books that, and we all hate this phrase, but they were sort of, in a sense, kind of guilty pleasures, those really sort of big fat hardback books with lots of kind of sex and shopping in them. And there is a hint of that in this book. But you've hardly left behind Murder and Mayhem, have you?
No, I've always loved everything dark ever since I was little. When other little girls, when they were 5, were reading about horses, I was reading about serial killers. So it's something that's always followed me. So of course, it's also a story about murder and death, and there's also a little bit of Fjällbacka in it as well.
Yes, there is.
I could not go away.
So tell us about your central character, Faye, because she is the person really who carries the whole story. It's her we're rooting for, even though she has a pretty dark side too.
Well, the idea for Faye actually came from a book that I've read and reread ever since I was a teenager. I still read it like once per year, and it's Faye Weldon's The Lives and Lusts of a She-Devil. And I just love that powerful message of a woman that is rising from the ashes and really coming into her own power and strength. And that's, I mean, I named my main character Faye as an homage to Faye Weldon and that particular book, because that's what happens to my main character. She really, really like the phoenix bird rise from the ashes.
She, of course, what she's escaping from, as in Lives and Loves of a She-Devil, is a horrible and faithless husband. And as well as the kind of, as you say, the echoes of certain genre and books from the past, there is a kind of very contemporary sort of feeling of an examination of coercive control in marriages. I mean, he's a thoroughly nasty piece of work, isn't he?
He's an asshole. He's really, really true asshole. And I mean, we've all encountered them. If you're a woman and you've been alive for a couple of decades, I mean, you have encountered them. We all have. And and they come in different shapes. I mean, they're not all the brutal husband that beats you behind closed doors. There's so much abuse going on that is not more psychological. That's Jack in an essence.
Yes. I mean, in one of the ways he makes Faye feel terrible, and one suspects she also has a propensity to kind of feel terrible about herself at times. I mean, he makes her feel absolutely terrible about the way she looks, doesn't he?
Well, the way he maintains control over her is that he creates so much uncertainty and insecurity for her, for the way she looks, the way she talks, the way she takes care of their daughter, the family. He makes her feel that she's not smart, even though she's much, much smarter actually than he is. And that's the way he controls her. So it doesn't happen, I mean, over one day. This is something that has happened gradually in their relationship. Piece by piece, he has deconstructed her and turned her into a very, very insecure woman.
When things like that happen in marriages, and often there is a truly tragic outcome to that. I mean, there is horrific violence from which people do not and cannot recover. There is murder, there is brutal death. But when those things are not present, and in the case of your book, where I think this is to an extent what you wanted to explore, how possible is it for people to put their lives back together, to live that kind of, as it were, sort of almost folkloric thing, the phoenix from the flames, the idea of how you actually struggle free of this and put your life back together?
I think it is becoming easier as the generations pass. I mean, we have come from a tradition of women being very, very, very dependent on men, being housewives, living in a single income household where they've been totally dependent on their husband's salary. That is changing, and that's why the power is starting to shift. I don't think it's going fast enough, but we now have the opportunities to take control back over our lives. And I usually, I talk a lot with women about this, that we really, really need to take responsibility for our own lives. You cannot depend on a man. It doesn't matter how good he seems, how much in love you are, how everything is fine now. You don't know what has happened 20 years down the road. And you need to make sure that you have taken care of yourself and that you can stand on your own two legs. If he lives with a secretary, you need to have an education, a job, or money in the bank, something that is security. And that's our responsibility.
One of the things that does. And we'll be careful, of course, not to kind of issue spoilers to this novel. But you mentioned there that she is very smart. She's much smarter than him. And in fact, you share a background to a certain extent with her. She studies economics at university. That's where she meets Jack. But then her career goes by the by. But of course, an economics background is rather helpful, isn't it? So I wondered, how you wanted to sort of weave that in, that she, actually entrepreneurialism, business can be your way out.
Yes, I mean, that is the way out for many women, and we are very resourceful. Women have fantastic resources, and I just love female entrepreneurs. I think there's so much power. Unfortunately, we still have a very uneven power balance in Sweden. I think it's about 1% of the investing capital that goes to female businesses. 99% goes to male businesses. But hopefully that is changing as well. I'm trying to raise daughters and sons who will be part of that change.
That's a really interesting point you make just there, though, in the language. It's not just about raising daughters, it's also about raising sons, isn't it?
Yes.
Sons have to be brought up to be egalitarian, to be feminist, as much as daughters do.
Yeah, I've told my sons that if I ever learn that they are mistreating a woman, I will put them on a one-way ticket up to the very, very most northern part of Sweden, and they will never be heard of again. So they know they know the house rules.
Now, I should just say this is something you put into practice. You explore it in books, but you've also worked on entrepreneurial schemes, haven't you? I mean, you've got a sort of partnership in Invest in Her, which is really sort of, as it were, kind of putting your money and rather your time where your mouth is. Just tell us a little bit about that.
It's an investment company that I started together with my business partners, also female. And because we read these articles and we talked so much about the fact that, as I said, 1% of the investment capital goes to women. It's absolutely ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. But we also said that it's easy to just talk about it. You don't create change by just talking. You have to act also on it. So that's why we started an investment company that is for women.
Do you think, I mean, you wanted to write, you were very interested in writing for a long time. I mean, as you said, you were reading about serial killers when you were 5. I think you were much taken with the crime novels on your father's bookshelf when you were a kid. But you did go to study economics, and you did work as an economist for some time. I mean, how are these two things? How do you sort of manage these parts of your brain?
I'm actually very, very happy that I went that route, because it's been very, very beneficial for me as a writer to have that background. I worked in marketing, so that's, I mean, from my very first book, I very actively realized that I want to build myself as a brand. 15, 20 years ago when I started, that was almost a dirty word. You're not supposed to talk about literature and brands and advertising and sales and things like that in the same sentence. But as I try to explain it, is that I've always said that when I write my books, I don't think about those things. But once I've written it, of course, I want as many people as possible to read my books. And then those other things come into play. So I've always had a business mind as a part of being an author. And that has been very, very beneficial for me.
You're absolutely right. There is that sort of feeling, isn't there, that, art is over here, literature is over here, and that it's
very, very snobbish.
It is very snobbish, isn't it?
Yes. And there's also, I've always been a part of the debate in Sweden. I'm sure that debate goes on in every country about fine literature and, pop literature. And I've never been part of the fine literature. And I'm like, why should I be happier why should I be more proud to write something that is only read by 500 people? And why is it bad if it's, 25 million people who read it? I've never understood. I believe that there's room for both kinds of literature. when I look to my own reading, I've read so much ever since I was a child. And some days I just want some very, very easy reading, something that just takes my mind off, the everyday problems. And sometimes I want something that is more challenging. So why should I have to choose? I've never understood that conflict. And I'm very proud to be like pop culture author, very proud.
Just tell me a little bit about what made you take the step into writing, because as I said, you had a job, you had all sorts of other activities going on. You knew it was something you wanted to do. How did you do it?
Well, it was always my big dream, my huge dream, and I talked a lot about it. I told everyone who would listen that my big dream was to become an author. So one Christmas, my then husband, my first husband, I'm on my third now, he and my mother gave me as a Christmas gift, and they had paid the fee for a writer's course, and it was called How to Write Crime. And I actually started writing my first book, The Ice Princess, as an assignment during that course. And it was like once I'd opened that door, I could never close it again.
And did you feel any sense of kind of, okay, I know I've got to find out the building blocks, I've got to practicing the craft. I mean, you have a part of your website that actually says to people, if you want to do this, you can do this too. And here are some steps that you might take, and here are some exercises you might do. So you're very, very at home with the idea that there's a craft that everyone can learn and can practice. You've still got to have those ideas, haven't you? Did you ever feel this, I've wanted to do this for a long time. Am I going to be able to? How do I do it?
Well, firstly, I want to address with the writing course, because there is some kind of weird misconception when it comes to writing that you can't learn it by reading books about it or taking courses and classes. It's something that you're supposed to just have it or not. But we don't think it's weird if someone who's a talented artist goes to artist school and learns to paint from professors who can teach a lot, or a gifted dancer who goes to a dancing school for several years. We don't think that's weird, but with writing, we don't understand that you can actually learn it as a craft. You have to have a basic skill, of course, and as you say, the ideas is something that's what makes you unique. There are a lot of talented writers out there that probably just haven't gotten the right idea yet. But it is a craft, and you can learn it, and you can get better at it. I'm still learning. Every book I write, I hopefully get better and learn something.
Do you look back at your early books and see the things that have changed in the way that you write them and the craft that you've learned, as it were?
Yes, as I mentioned, I mean, I never reread my books because I'm quite sick of them once I've finished them, because you read them about 10 or 12 times when you edit. So when I'm finished, I never want to see the book again. But during this start of the quarantine, I did read my first book to my Instagram followers. So I read it live every day, and I mean, read it out loud. And I did think a lot about, this would have done this different today, and I would have done this different today. But I could also see that there were a lot of things that I was very proud of, and that had like a very naive and simple, fantastic quality to it. So I was actually quite proud when I read it.
You didn't. I mean, one hears, not too often, thankfully, but occasionally you hear of writers who are almost kind of disowning their very early work. And you didn't feel like that, clearly.
No, I mean, you can't. I mean, you have to learn to crawl before you can learn to walk. It's the same with writing. You have to start somewhere. You can't skip your first books. One book is going to be your first. So no, I'm quite proud of it, actually. But I do feel like I have evolved, and I think that's part of the process. The day that I feel that now I'm, at the top of my game and I know everything there is to know about writing, I think that's the day I should probably quit and do something else.
Learning or not, and those early books, I mean, you had a following, you had a readership, a very devoted one. pretty early on, didn't you?
Yes, I did get quite a lot of very faithful readers very early on, and they fell very much in love with my main characters, Eric and Patrick, because one of my goals was to make them very relatable. I didn't want it had been very popular for a while with this middle-aged male police officer that either listened to jazz or opera and drank whiskey and had serious problems with relationships with women. So I knew I did not want to do that. I wanted to create like this average, normal guy next door, girl next door couple. And I think that's why people fell in love with them. So people have a very, very personal relationship with Eric and Patrick. In fact, when my first divorce became public knowledge in Sweden, because I'm kind of like gossip material here, so it was all over the tabloids, I got emails from people. And when I opened them first, I thought, oh, so nice. They're like emailing me to say, how are you? No, no, no. They were writing, please say that Eric and Patrick isn't going to get a divorce now. I love the commitment. I love that commitment.
So they really felt that you, of course, Erica is a writer, you are aligned in some way with Erica in their mind. And what does she mean to you?
I mean, I love Erica. To me, Erica and Patrick are actual people as well. They're like my best friend. And I know it's a little bit pathetic to be 46 and to have two pretend people as best friends, but I've spent more time with them than with real people. So I guess that's a bit natural. But I actually love Erica now in contrast to Faye, because I can see my own development as a woman. Because when I wrote my first book about Eric and Patrick, I was 27. I was pregnant with my first child. And there was so much I didn't know about the world. And now, I mean, almost 20 years have passed. I have, 4 children, 3 marriages. So much has happened during these years. So I can see my own development. I would say if you combine Faye and Erica, you would probably get a pretty good idea of me as a person today.
Okay. Now, Fjällbacka, of course, is Erica's territory. Fjällbacka is also the other character in your novels. Yes. And Faye is, as we were saying, is from there originally. Now, Fjällbacka is obviously a big part of why and how you write and why and how people read your books. I've been there myself, and it just is a magical place. I was only there for a few days, and I was actually there on a kind of, this is where Camilla Läckberg comes from tour. Now, I don't think I'm the only one who's been on that tour, am I?
No, I think they have like 20 guides or something in 5 languages or something like that. And they do these guided tours. And I actually took the tour myself a year ago with 3 of my girlfriends. And I did it incognito because we were on the tour with, there were 2 lovely Australian ladies who had come to Fjällbacka because of the books, but they didn't know what I looked like. So they didn't recognize me. So I didn't say anything, but I asked so many stupid questions about Camilla Läckberg. And then I had agreed with the guide that we would do the reveal by ending the tour at my mom's place. So my mom was in on it too. And they didn't realize who I was until these 2 ladies stepped into my mother's apartment and saw pictures of me everywhere on the walls. But that was fun. That was so much fun.
Can't imagine what their reaction was at that moment.
I mean, they just started screaming. So I had a Justin Bieber moment there. I felt a little bit like Justin Bieber for a minute.
I don't know what it must be like to actually have sort of tours that are going on all the time. As you say, people come from far and wide. I did. And there are wonderful things around that area. Fantastic, lobster fishing and the weather islands where you can go and have a kind of fantastic scrabble about on the rocks, and then a sauna on plein air. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. But the town is really kind of put on the map by you. How does that feel?
I mean, it was a bit put on the map before by none other than Ingrid Bergman.
Well, there is that, yes.
So there is that little thing about Fjällbacka as well. But I love to be in good company with Ingrid Bergman to have attracted people to Fjällbacka. But it is weird to me. It is weird, and I don't go there during summers, because at summers it's packed with people. Because I usually go, I mean, other times of the year, because it gets a little bit too intense. But my mother still lives there, and she gets interviewed a lot by magazines from all over the world, because when they ask for me, and someone in Fjällbacka says, well, she's not here, but we can call her mom if you want to. And my mom is very social and very bored at home and very talkative, so she gets in the car and she meets up with the journalist and photographer, and so she's a bit of a celebrity there now. She loves the attention.
I can imagine she does. And of course, she is probably, like very, very many mothers, cannot resist an opportunity to sort of wax lyrical about her daughter's talents.
Yes, of course. Yeah. She's she's not very humble when it comes to that. So I usually get very embarrassed when I'm around when she goes off.
Camilla, I mean, Fjällbacka, as we, is the setting. But you have been very interested in writing about it to sort of delve into its past, haven't you? To create your stories. I mean, frequently the mystery that is at the heart of one of your novels relates to something in the town's history, to something that has happened there before. Just tell us a little bit about that, about the kind of research you do, about why it was important to do that.
Well, at first I did that, just by chance. In The Ice Princess, I just had this idea that required for me to go back 25 years in time. And I just realized in writing The Ice Princess that I actually enjoy working with two time levels. And I've always been very interested in history. I think that we are starting to forget how important history is to understand the present. And I've always loved history. So that's when I started to do a lot of research about my hometown that I've learned so much since I started writing these books about my hometown that I did not know. And there's so many intriguing things that have happened. There's so many fantastic, amazing people that have lived there. And I just love incorporating that with the murder mystery in present time.
I remember being told about anchovies.
Yes.
Fjällbacka is famous for its anchovies, isn't it? And the kind of swarms of anchovies that will congregate there from time to time.
Yes, it's like a small herring kind of fish. That was the main, the thing that the fishing village lived off. And some years there would be lots of them, some years there would be none, and then people would starve. So they were really, really dependent on it. But it was a big industry, and it's something that every Swede knows. I don't particularly like it. It has a very specific taste, but yeah, a lot of people love it.
You do, however, like food and cookery, don't you? Because among all the other things that you've done, you've also published cookery books. I mean, how is there time to do that too?
Well, I'm very passion driven. So when I get an idea in my head of something I want to do, I usually do it. And the cooking books came about when I started talking to an old childhood friend of mine from Fjällbacka, who's now one of the most famous chefs in Sweden. Mm-hmm. And we just, we ran into each other on the street in Stockholm. And we started talking about the food in Fjällbacka and the fish and the shellfish. And we stood there for an hour. And then after an hour, we said, like, we need to do a cookbook together and really present this amazing food that we have in Fjällbacka. So that's how a lot of things happen for me. I get passionate about something and I just want to create something out of it. And I'm quite a doer. If I set out to do something, I do it.
You don't say, because you've also written a whole series of children's books. How did they come about?
Well, it was a big dream of mine to write children's books, because I think to be part of someone's childhood is, one of the most amazing things you can do. Whenever you think about the books you read as a child, I mean, you always get very nostalgic and have this warm, fuzzy feeling inside. But I didn't get a good idea until I was pregnant with my third child. And he had 2 siblings on my side and 2 siblings on his father's side. So I realized I'm really going to have to sell this new baby to this very suspicious crowd of very short, small people. So I started lying to them. They were at the time, they were 2, 4, 5, and 6. So they were quite small, the siblings. And I started lying to them and saying that this new baby, it's not like, an average normal baby. It's a superhero baby. And I created these stories of how he was out flying when we were sleeping, doing superhero stuff. And I would find things in his crib in the morning, like a feather from a bird or a pine cone or something like that. And then I realized after a while, oh my goodness, this is a children's book. So that's how Super Charlie came about. My son's name is Charlie.
Yes, and there are several of these books now, aren't there?
There's 11 now, I think. Yeah, 11.
When you think about the fact that, as I mentioned right at the very beginning of the event, I mean, you have been published in lots of countries, translated into lots of languages. I mean, obviously, many of the people who read your books across the world, myself included, are, being a certain number of things about Swedish culture, Ingrid Bergman, ABBA, etc. We may have been there too, but you are essentially talking to people whose cultures might be completely different from mine. And I wonder why you think, how you think, what makes books translate into other cultures? What makes that happen?
I've thought about that a lot myself, and I actually have asked people that when going on tours on different parts of the world. And for example, I asked, there's a Spanish lady who's a journalist, so she's interviewed me several times in Spain, and she's a huge fan of the Fjällbacka books. She's an absolute diehard, huge fan. And I asked her, what is it about them? Because as you say, very different cultures. What is it about them that attracts you? And she said, you know what? It's the fact that I come from a small Spanish village, and there's so much I can relate to in this book about this Swedish couple living in a Swedish village. So I think that I've tapped onto something that is human, not doesn't necessarily have to do with your culture or your country of origin. I mean, we're humans. We basically function the same way wherever we are. The basic needs are the same.
One of those needs, obviously, is to find out what has happened when something dreadful has gone on, when somebody has been murdered, when there has been a disappearance, when there is an awful tragedy. But writing about those things must also be very difficult. I mean, you are writing about things that actually, do happen in real life, in life outside of literature, that do have consequences, violence, the urge to kill, the urge to inflict harm. I mean, keeping all those feelings around your head, does that ever take you to kind of dark places?
No. I mean, of course, as anyone, I do get depressed when I open the magazines and I read a horrible story about parents who have mistreated, abused their child, etc., etc. As any normal person, I get affected by that. But I've also, ever since I was a child, as I said, I've been a nerd when it comes to really trying to figure out and try to understand how people are capable of doing these horrible things. And one of the things that I've realized while being a fictional writer of murder mysteries is whatever I can come up with that is fictional, the real world always comes up with worse stories. I mean, there are some stories that come out on the news, and I'm like, if I would have written this in a book, people would have said that this is too unbelievable. Absolutely crazy stories. So I'm just very interested in what makes people do these horrible things. I mean, we're all capable of killing. If someone was threatening my children, of course I would be, or my life, of course I would be capable of killing that person. But some people kill for money. Some people kill for revenge. Some people kill for fun. The threshold is what is different, but we're all capable of it.
One of the things that, again, we will be careful not to spoil this for people who haven't read the book, but one of the things that lays on top of the Gilded Cage is that here is this story of a woman getting out from under the life with this dreadful, dreadful man. But there is something hidden and very, very dark in her past, isn't there? And she is an exceptionally complicated character who has capacities that perhaps take a long time, take a book's length to find out. Just tell me a little bit about that, sort of creating a complex character who we feel a huge amount of sympathy with in some ways, but is also somewhat beyond the pale in others.
Well, that was a challenge in creating Faye, because what I wanted to create in Faye was a woman who was allowing herself to act as men are allowed to act, because there are different sets of rules for men and women. And women especially, we are taught and expected to have qualities that are nurturing, loving, forgiving, caregiving, and we're supposed to turn the other cheek. We're not supposed to be, aggressive, then we're bitches. And I mean, you can see when you talk about a male CEO and a female CEO, you talk about male CEOs who fire people in words like strong, decisive. And when a woman does the same thing, she's aggressive, she's a bitch, she's vindictive, etc., etc., etc. So there are different rules. And in this book, I've allowed Faye to act as a man is allowed to act. And I had a reader who wrote to me where she said that when I'd read the book, I really didn't like her. I really, really didn't like her. But then I made the thought experience, what if Faye had been a male character? And then she wrote, then I realized that I read books like that every day. I see movies like that every day. When Liam Neeson in Taken takes out 100 bad guys in a very violent way, we go like, yay, go Liam. Women are not allowed to act like that, but Faye does.
Yes, Faye kind of goes from sort of not being able to say boo to a goose in the English to she's quite kick-ass, isn't she?
Badass, yeah, she's really.
She is badass. She is badass. Camilla, literally since we came live, questions have been kind of flooding in, so I'm actually going to start taking some questions, because there are just, we'll get through as many as we can. I promise. I have a couple of more things to ask you, but I will before our time is up. For a start, Hattie, hello Hattie, thank you so much, asks a very pertinent question. How much of this storyline is based on fact? Was there a feeding in from real life stories?
It's always difficult to say, because there's this mix. When you write a book, you pour from a well of everything you've seen, heard, experienced in your life. It could be something that I've experienced myself. It could be a dialogue I've had, a conversation I've had. It could be something that has happened to me. It could also be a friend's story. It could be, a TV show that has raised a question in my head about something that I put in a book later. It could be someone I see on the subway. And all of this blends together. So it's hard even for me to sometimes say this and this and this is mine and this is from this. I kind of blend, but I've always taken a lot from my own life, because I think I write the best when I write something that I can really, really relate to. So I do share a lot of my own life in my books.
Yes.
And I've had my fair share of assholes too, so part of them is Jack.
We have another question here. I'm not quite sure who this is from, but it's a good question. Which authors have inspired you?
Authors have been gods for me ever since I was a small child. I didn't have pop stars or movie stars on my walls. I mean, to me, it was authors that were my absolute idols. And one of my earliest was Agatha Christie. And I was very happy when I became older and started, reading about her as an author, because she was really badass. And I was very happy when I found that out. Stephen King is, I read a lot of horror, crime stories and horror. So also I read a lot, like the Rue Morgue murders, Edgar Allan Poe, John Dixon Carr. And I would also say that the Anglo-Saxon way of writing has been the one that have influenced me most. Reginald Hill, for example, is a big favorite. I really like the way of telling a story that you do in the Anglo-Saxon tradition.
It interested me as you were talking then about some of your favorites. Do you think you gravitated more towards books written in the English language than you did towards Swedish novels?
I've read a lot of the Swedish ones as well, so I would say it's a mix, actually. I started when I was a child. I read like the earliest books that were written in the 50s, crime stories that were written in the 50s in Sweden that are very well known here, and they kind of formed the base. I also read the Sjöwallvalla books. Their names are impossible to pronounce, I know, but it's the Martin Beck mysteries that have been very successful. Yes. Internationally, and they of course influenced me a lot, as well as I think all crime writers that kind of started with them in the big scene of Nordic noir. I think started with Sjöwallvalla.
Really? And you think that's a sort of foundational writer, and then this great kind of vast array of writers has sort of grown up from that beginning?
I do think so. They were among the first to put the crime stories in a context of society.
Now, this is a great question from Sharon. It's not to do with books at all, but it is to do with something else we've talked about.
You can ask anything.
Yes. Camilla, if you had been in Aberdeen in person for the weekend, what Scottish delicacy would you have enjoyed?
Oh my goodness. I'm not really familiar with the Scottish kitchen. I have heard about haggis, of course. And I would say that would not maybe be on my priority list, but if someone would offer it to me, I would, of course, be respectful and taste it. I've tasted the most strange things all around the world. I think number one is sheep testicles in Iceland. I do not want a repeat experience of that, I have to say. There were pig ears in Lyon also. In Lyon, you always get served a lot of intestine food as well. So what do you think I should try in Scotland?
Well,
what is the number one thing I must try when I come?
You see, I'm going to go back to Sharon or to some of our other audience members to suggest things, because I'm not in Scotland.
Oh, you're Irish, aren't you?
I'm in Ireland, and I could recommend some things that I think you should definitely try when you were here. But I would really, really put my foot in it, I think. I mean, I would probably get it totally wrong, because I want to say an Ardbeg smoky, but that's probably totally the wrong bit of Scotland, and it's probably offend everybody. Keep it coming, those ideas, and we'll get back to that. Now, Louise asks, says that her favourite of your books is The Hidden Child, and she has read it twice and has recommended it to her Prime Cafe reading group. Where did you get the idea for The Hidden Child from?
I actually got the idea from when I did research about Fjällbacka, and I realized that it was quite a hot spot during World War II. I hadn't known that before, but there were a lot of things being smuggled between Fjällbacka and Norway, because Norway was engaged in the war and Sweden was neutral. We all know how neutral Sweden was, letting the German trains pass through Sweden, etc., etc. Don't get me started. But it was actually a piece of Fjällbacka history that really got me started thinking about that story. And also, I had written 4 books before The Hidden Child, and I had described a very complicated relationship between Erica and her mother. but I didn't know myself why her mother was such a cold woman that had such a hard time loving even her daughters. But when I did the research and I started shaping the story for The Hidden Child, I just got her whole story in my lap. I'm getting goosebumps even now talking about it, because that was one of those wow moments as an author. Her whole story just landed in my lap.
I mean, it's such an interesting point, isn't it, when you write a series of books with central characters.
Yeah.
Obviously, there are things that you have to know about them before you even start. But the idea that actually they continue to grow and the people around them's backstories and histories are slowly revealed, even to you, is fascinating.
They do kind of start living their own life. And Bertil Mellberg, for example, the head of the police station in Tanumshede, I did not intend for him to be anything but a horrible, vile human being that would be like this comic relief in the books. But he just took over and showed me that there was a heart of gold somewhere deep inside there. So he showed me something else.
Oh, so even when you're trying to write a nasty character, there's a little redeeming feature, right? Does the darkness of the kind of nasty guy, Hannah asks, live with you when you're writing about a really difficult character? Does that kind of seep into the life every day?
No, I mean, I've talked about this with some of my crime writing colleagues, because in Sweden we're quite a small community, and I'm very good friends with a lot of the other mostly female crime writers. So we do have these wine dinners where we talk about murder and shoes and everything in between. I'm the kind, it's very different. Marie Ljungstedt, for example, she gets scared when she sits at home and writes. I don't. I get kind of excited by evil. When I write something that is really nasty and I have a really nasty character, I get all happy. So there's probably something wrong with me. I don't know.
It actually kind of sparks you up.
Yes.
Kind of thing.
Yeah.
Now, here is a question from, I don't think there's a name on this, but you will know who you are, because it's greetings from Portugal, which has just made me think how lovely it would be to be in Portugal. I'm imagining it might be somewhat warmer than us, who are rather more northerly at the minute. Who asks a great question: do you have plans to keep going back to Fjällbacka and to that series? Our questioner loves Patrick and Erica and misses them.
There will be more books about Erica and Patrick. I have a deadline for the next manuscript a year from now. So next March 2022, I'm going to have the next manuscript ready about Erica and Patrick. So the idea is forming in my head now.
Oh, okay. So you've also asked another question, answered another questioner's question. Janet says, has Erica run out of ways of being involved in police investigations, and are you going to concentrate on standalone novels or series of novels? She enjoys both of them.
Well, it's become a mix for me. As I said, I'm very passionate driven, and when I get an idea of something I want to do that now, and so that's why I have ended up doing a million different things, all have it in common that I'm very passionate about them. So I'm doing it more Fjällbacka, as I said, but I've also just started a new crime series together with a colleague. His name is Henrik Fexeus, and he's Sweden. He's a very well-known mentalist. And so he has his own TV shows, and he writes books about mind control and things like that. And we have created a trilogy together with new couple, Mina, who's a police officer, a female police officer, and Vincent, who is a mentalist, and starts aiding the police when they have a series of murders in Stockholm where the murders are done as magic tricks gone wrong.
What has been the experience of writing with someone, of working in that kind of collaborative way? I know you've done it on other sorts of projects, but on writing?
Well, I was terrified because, I'm an only child. I don't like sharing. I don't like having to compromise. I don't do that. I buy my own bag of candy. I don't do the sharing thing. And I'm married to another only child, so that's very interesting. We all both have each our candy bags, and do not swap. But I've known Henrik as a very, very good friend for 13 years. So we had a very solid friendship foundation. But we also said that, okay, we'll try. If this doesn't work, we'll slowly back away and say that, okay, we're not going to do this because we're not going to ruin our friendship over this. But it's worked fantastically. We haven't argued once.
Wow. Okay. So
we've more had these very humble conversations like, you're a genius. No, you're a genius. No, you're a genius. My husband is listening sometimes because we've been sitting in my house and he's like, oh my God, you two. Hear yourselves.
I think I'm an only child also, and I think you hit your nail on the head there when you said, you'd very carefully back away. I think only children are actually brilliant at being adaptable and getting on with people. You've got to have an exit strategy, haven't you?
Yeah,
it's the kind of
plan B, always a plan B.
You have to have a plan B. I think that's what distinguishes us and our sort of general brilliance in other ways. Serena asks, Scandi Noir is popular in Scotland. Is tartan noir a thing in Sweden?
It's not. I think Sweden is a bit, we've had so many Swedish crime writers that we haven't really imported many from abroad. We have more though from the English-speaking countries, but I know there are fantastic crime stories coming out of France and Spain, Italy, for example. We haven't really adapted those, but I think, isn't Denise Mina? She's Scottish, I think.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I love her books.
I am just going to quickly update us with the food suggestions, things that you might. I think we should really do that. Barbara, who's our wonderful moderator,
probably going to try to sell me on haggis anyway.
Well, she says yes to the
I just know it.
And okay, seafood,
haggis.
Seafood from Aberdeen. Cullen skink. Serena says, who's asked a question this evening.
Almost indecent. I have to say.
It's a soup that I know that much. Has a Norwegian equivalent. Oh, but it's not as good. I think she means Norwegian equivalent. I'm not sure quite. Sharon says you need a Scottish breakfast with square sausage or lawn sausage and potato scones. Mince and tatties, says John, and Aberdeen Angus sirloin steak as some of the suggestions there. So you could probably find something that you'd enjoy.
And I'm guessing there's a lot of gravy, things with gravy.
There may be some gravy involved.
Yeah.
We just
always a place for gravy.
There's another question. I think it's from Mel. I've got there so caught up in the suggestions of things to eat, which is just always a problem.
I can cook food for hours, so no problem on my part.
I think Mel has a question about. And I want to ask this too, of course, about Swedish dancing on ice and how you found that.
No, actually, I didn't do dancing on ice. They asked me about that, but I actually said no to that one. But I did do Dancing with the Stars.
Yes. Do you find it? The question is, do you find writing easier than that?
Yes, I think anything is easier than that. And it's not only the dancing, it's going out live, as it is in Sweden, every Friday, as it was, in front of 2 million people watching, because it's a very popular show in Sweden.
Yes.
And you have to dance and perform in front of people in a very, very small dress. Yes. As a writer, you're not used to performing. You're not used to, so that was the big challenge for me, but I loved it. And I even kept competing in dancing afterwards, actually. I've done 2 pro-am competitions in the US, because in Latin dancing,
wow.
I got so hooked. So
you got completely hooked on it.
I got completely hooked. So I did the whole ballroom thing with the big hair and the tons of makeup and the spray tan that makes you look orange and the sequins and the feathers. I did all of it.
I mean, this is the issue that, of course, things like that are very difficult. They're very exposing, as you say. I mean, almost
Yeah.
literally when you have to wear a tiny skirt. But the point is, when you are writing books, you are a lot of the time sitting in a room on your own in front of a screen to do something so different. Even though I know you're a person who likes lots of different things,
And
I
now
mean, that's an entirely different thing, isn't it?
yeah, now it's becoming a family affair as well, because I did Dancing with the Star 2012. My husband did it 2015. And this year in Sweden, my ex-husband, Charlie's dad, is doing it. So we're having a little bit of family competition here.
Oh, so it's like the Von Trapps. Soon you'll have an entire family thing.
Dysfunctional Von Trapp family.
This is actually another question from Mel, who's in Bolton, and it's such a good question. He's thought that Faye's support network of female friends was a strong theme in the Gilded Cage. It is indeed. How important do you think this is for women to have?
I would say that I often say with a bit of sadness that we are our own worst enemies, because women are taught to compete with each other instead of, grouping together and working together, because men do that so much better. They help each other to job positions. They go golfing together and make plans, and they help each other. Women compete with each other. If there's a boardroom with 10 seats in a big company and there's one woman and 9 men in that board, the other women, they compete about the one seat taken by a woman. They don't compete with all 10. And so I think it's really, really sad. If we could work together more, I mean, we would take over the world.
That's not to say that won't happen. I suppose when people really compete for very scarce resources.
It's a work in progress.
It's a work in progress.
Yeah.
Now this is quite an emotional question, but I'm going to ask it. This is from Jacqueline. I think it might be our last audience question. I'm going to ask you something else. Jacqueline asks, can you write when you're feeling heartbroken or you're struggling in your personal life, or are you able to write regardless of how you're feeling? That's an interesting question, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I've written, I don't know, 30 books, I think it is, 33 books, including the cookbooks and children's books. I've written 33 books over, 18 years, 4 kids, 3 marriages, a couple of douchebags. It's been, I've had a very, life has been challenging sometimes during these years. Life has also been fantastic, but a lot has happened. And I've always written. Sometimes I have been writing with tears falling onto my keyboard, but if I have a deadline, you have to produce whether you're heartbroken or not. I've written with being hugely pregnant, putting the computer on my belly, writing. I've done signings with, I've breastfed one of the kids, so I've had like a blanket over and I've signed the books over them. I believe in, I have a very serious work ethic, and I believe that the new generation, I'll try to be a bit diplomatic, and my own children are the new generation, they feel a lot. They're like, I don't feel good today. I don't think I should go to work. And it's like, you go to work, I mean, no matter how you feel. I think that's a work ethic.
Well, it's certainly produced quite a lot of work, and quite a lot of work that has really made people so happy and so engaged and so excited. I just wanted to ask you as a final question. You talked a bit about some of your upcoming projects, but we have been living through this, just the strangest and in many ways the saddest times, disconnected from one another, people going through enormous trauma. And I'm wondering how that's actually going to affect fiction, how this is going to feed in, because fiction does have to reflect what's going on in the real world some of the time. Do you think that last year and this year and what's still to come is going to find its way into work? Will it find its way into your work?
It already has. I actually, this fall, I've started a movie production company together with 2 friends who are brothers. One is a director and one is a famous actor in Sweden. And we have formed the Bad Flamingo Productions studio together. And we have actually filmed and are now completing a movie called Glacier, which takes place, it's a love story taking place under a pandemic. Two people trapped in a hotel during a pandemic, and it will premiere in May. So we actually, we took a film crew and I wrote the script while we were filming. We did it very guerrilla style, and it's amazing. It's with two of the best actors in Sweden, Lena Endre, who is an international star, and Alexander Karim, who's one of my business partners in the production company. So yeah, I do like that. When something happens, you turn it into a creative outlet. And I think we will see a lot of movies and books and everything about this crisis. And I think it's a lot bad, of course, but I do think that there will be a lot of good coming out of it as well. I know a lot of people around me have really, started thinking about what they want out of life.
Mm. Mm. Well, I'm very glad to hear that you formed a film company and made a film, because we did think that you were taking it a bit easy and not really getting enough done. So thank goodness you've got some new projects on the go.
I've got the best job in the world. Why would I do vacation?
Camilla, it has been such a pleasure to talk to you. Now, you said to me when we were just chatting before we came on screen together, you said, ask me anything you like. I've got no filter, you said, and I thought we might, don't say that to someone, you never know. But you've just been so generous and open, and it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so, so much. We wish you luck in everything you do. We very much hope that you will come back and eat Cullen skink and Aberdeen Angus and Aberdeen Rowie. I don't even know what that is. But when we're all in person, we're all together. And haggis for sure. Now, to our wonderful audience, I'm so sorry I didn't get to all your questions. We've not done badly, but we could easily have another hour. Waterstones are our book-selling partner, and you can buy Camilla's book, including this wonderful The Gilded Cage and her backlist. Do stick around for 8 o'clock for Joan Nesbo. And thank you for being a part of Granite Noir this year. We've had such a blast doing this. It's not over yet. We have a whole day of events tomorrow. If you do feel that you might like to donate, follow the link on the website. But thank you so, so much. And thank you very much, the absolutely irrepressible Camilla Läckberg.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.